presentation that we did. And just a quick recap of what the Islamic Golden Age, or when Islam was on the rise, on the top. And not to say that it's not rising, now is re-rising again, now it's coming back up to the top. But this was the time that we talked about last month, when the Islamic Empire had extended from the Arabian Peninsula, all of North Africa into Spain, and extended all the way to the east, into China and India. Now in this period here, the Muslims and whoever was living in these lands, they were free to move around in any part of the empire as they feel like. They didn't need any visa. There was no need to exchange currencies. Everything was universal. The universal language at that period was Arabic, and they interchanged knowledge. So we know in this time there was a house of knowledge, Bait al, which was located in Iraq. Bait al-Hikmah. Now, quick recap, man. There was many invention. There was many breakthrough that happened in those periods, and we said that the motivation behind this came purely from the Quran and from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That was the motivation, because Islam called for always looking for directions. Islam called for cleanliness, measurements, time. And when you look at some of these breakthroughs and some of these inventions, you will see primarily that they focus on some of these aspects. Now, we'll go to the first. We'll continue. We talked about Spain. When the Muslims crossed the Mediterranean into Spain, southern Spain, they ruled for 800 years. And they did not go there and destroy. They went and they enhanced. They took over from the Visigoth, who didn't do anything to make life better for the people. So when the Muslims went there, they established libraries, school, bathhouses. They were big in poetry and architecture. So even now in southern Spain, when you go there, you can find some of the remains of the architecture. Queen Isabella and Ferdinand, they tried their best to eradicate anything that looked and smelled Islam. They eradicated the Muslims, they ran them out of there, they destroyed the libraries, they burned the books. But alhamdulillah, before they were able to do that, many books was moved from Cordoba and to Alexandria, where there's located many books in Arabic still, which has not been translated as yet. So no one knows the knowledge that's contained in those books. Now here is one that we're going to start with. His name is Abu Musa Jabr ibn Hayyan. He was a polymath. He was a chemist, alchemist, an astronomer, a philosopher, physicist, pharmacist, and a physician. He was the first one to start the distillation. He, in the year 800, transferred alchemy into chemistry. This was when he was the one who first did that. He discovered sulfuric acid and nitric acid, and emphasized systematic experimentation, and was the founder of modern chemistry as we know it today. Of course, at his time, that was on top. Now chemistry has advanced more, and there is more discoveries made. But he laid the groundwork for what is taking place today. Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. His Latin name is Algorithm. Al-Khwarizmi lived in Iraq, and he did most of his studies and most of his breakthrough in Bait al-Hikmah in Iraq. Now, what is so interesting about about Al-Khwarizmi. He wrote a book called Al-Kitab al-Muqtasar fi Hasba al-Jabr wal-Muqabbala. So you see that word? Al-Jabr wal-Muqabbala. So we do algebra these days. So the algebra came from this guy right here, Al-Khwarizmi. So Al-Jabr wal-Muqabbala, the translation of that book is the competitious book of on calculation by completion and balancing. So we have the equation, inequality equation, where you balance the equation on both sides and you calculate for the x. Now, in this time here, the Indians and the Chinese used to come to Iraq. Scholars used to come to Iraq because they were in the Islamic Empire, and knowledge came from India and from the Chinese. So one of the knowledge that came from the Brahmin people, which is southern India, was the numeral system that we use today, which is called the Arabic numeral system. However, Al-Khwarizmi, when he wrote his book, he said that this number system, he named it the Hindu number system. Okay? Now the Brahmin people had the 1 through 9 characters. But what they had found was they also had the 0, which was a very, very important part in discovery. That 0 played a very big in our society today. So what he did was, he took the numbers from the Indians and he developed a system which he called, and that's when he did the equations, but he didn't stop there. You see, let me show you. You see the top part, the second translation, the 1, 2, 3, 4, that has the circle and the angles. Now that was the translation of the numbers. The numbers was translated according to the angles of how many angles it has. That's how they translated the numbers to be. The bottom part of it, the addition and the subtraction and the multiplication, this is where the big breakthrough came in. Now, after he wrote this book ended up in Italy by a man named Leonardo Fabanucci. Who is this guy? This guy is if you ask anyone from the European continent who this guy is, they will tell you he was the mathematician. He was the best mathematician that they had. But Fabanucci's father used to travel around the Mediterranean. And he went to Algeria and Morocco and these places, and he saw in the marketplace that the Muslims were already doing calculation. They were doing calculation with weights. And he was intrigued by that, and he brought the book back to Italy, and in 1202, he wrote his book, and he introduced the number system, called it the Arabic numeral system. And hence, the name stuck up until today, that when you talk about the numeral system that we use, is considered the Arabic numeral system. Okay? But Khwarizmi, he addressed it as the Hindu number system. Now let's go back to the 0. Why is the 0 important? Insignificant numbers. Why is the 0 important? Today, I'm using a computer. You have a phone. Okay? The language of the computer and the phone is a binary language. And binary language is 0s and 1s. Without the 0s and the 1, we won't have our computer, you won't have your cell phone. So every character on a computer is represented by a binary code. Okay? So that's how important that breakthrough was. Now, Fabanucci, when he translated that book, he didn't have time to figure out how to do the addition and the subtraction except for what he saw. Okay? So I'm going to play a little video. It's not too long. Hopefully I can get it. Okay, that's the video. All right, so when we do addition, we start from which side of the column? We start from the right side of the column and we work our way to the left. Okay? The European or the Western way of doing things, they always start from the left and they work their way to the right. Okay? But because of the calculation that he saw and was not able to come up with a different way of doing the calculation, it was left the way that we do our additions, our subtractions, our multiplications. So this was one of the things that when I looked at it, I said this was a very big influence. There was no way to hide or to discard of this information. I mean, he might have probably changed some things, but this one he couldn't get rid of. Okay? So algorithmy, why his name is algorithm? Because he didn't have an equation system. Okay? So the way he used to write his problem, he used to first write the problem out, and then he would give you the computation how to solve that problem. So this is a translation of one of his problems that he wrote, and you can read. If someone say you divide 10 into 2 parts, now if you're good in equation, then you can figure out the equation for this here. If you divide 10 into 2 parts, multiply the one by itself, it will be equal to the other taken 81 times. That's the equation problem. Now, when you go to school, now this is part of algebra in any college you go to, that they give you a word problem, and you have to figure out the equation to go with that word problem. Okay? So, being that he was influenced by Islam, he had to calculate for inheritance, he had to calculate for measurements, for weights, and different aspects. Now we talk about Fatima al-Fahri, that she was a sister in Morocco, in Fez, and due to an inheritance of wealth from her father and her husband, she decided to take her money that she inherited and establish the university in Morocco called Al-Qarawiyyin, and which is still standing there today. We also spoke that when you receive your degree or you receive your completion, that degree would have been as if though you had received a PhD in today's standard. Because the prerequisite to get into that university was to memorize Quran, to be good in astronomy, to know fiqh, hadith. So these were some of the prerequisites to get into this university. Her sister, on the other hand, she also inherited a lot of money, and she took hers and she went over to Cordoba in Andalusia, and she built a masjid in Andalusia. Abu al-Qasim Abbas ibn Farnas. Now the Western world will tell you that the Wright brother was the one who started the flying. Okay? Not so. Ibn Farnas, he was from the year 800 to 887. He was a polymath also. He was good in, he was a physician, he was a chemist, he was an engineer, he was a musician, and he was a poet. But what he did was, he looked, and he said that if the birds, he looked at the birds, of course, and he saw how they were swaying, how they were flying, and he took upon himself and he strapped something like a wing on his body, and he made many attempts to fly. On the last attempt that he made that would take his life, he jumped off a building in Cordoba, and that's when he passed away, he died. And the only thing that he did not do, or he did not invent, was the tail, because the tail is very important when you fly. If the airplane does not have a tail, it's going in a spiral down motion. Ibn Farnas, there is a lunar impact on the moon that was named after him because of his contribution towards astronomy. al-Zahrawi. His Latin name is Abu Cassasis. Now you see some of these books, some of these philosophers and these scientists, they have Latin name because they took the material that they wrote and they translated it into Latin and they give them a Latin name. So you will find that they'll try to disguise some of the name of these guys. Okay? So he was born in Cordoba. And his father was a surgeon. And he's considered a father of surgery also. So what he did was, he invented or he made a lot of surgical instruments, which is still being used today, but maybe they changed a few design. But the concept of the design is still there. Okay? He was the first one to use cat guts when he did an internal stitch. That cat guts will dissolve automatically. You didn't have to go back in there to remove any stitches. He wrote 30 volumes on the practice of surgery. And the chapter on surgery was the one that was translated into Latin and they used there for 500 years. Okay? Muslims, we walk around and we're being told that the only thing that the Muslims know how to do is to blow things up. We run people over, we kill people, we shoot and we destroy. Okay? These are examples of what was done 1,000 years ago, still affects us in this day. Still affects us. Hassan ibn al-Haytham, very important guy. What he discovered, what the breakthrough he did. Hassan was born in Iraq. The Greek theory on the way the eye sees, they said that the eye emits rays to an object and then the ray bounces back into our eyes. That was the concept of the Greeks. Anyway, the story went that Ibn al-Haytham was summoned to Egypt to see if he could control the flow of the Nile River. And when he got there, when he saw the flow of the Nile, he said this is impossible because if the Egyptians couldn't figure this out, he was not able to do it. But he could not go and tell the Emir that he's not able to do it. And what happened was, he played insane, and they locked him in a dark room. Okay? So while he was in the dark room, the report said that he poked holes in the windows to look outside because it's dark. He wanted light in there. And what he noticed was a phenomenon that happened, that images from the outside was projected on the wall behind him, but the image was obscured. It was upside down. So then he started to think, then he started to look into this. He said, if I'm in a dark room, and he called the camera, if I'm in a dark room, and the image from the outside is projected upside down, then that's the way that our eyes see. Because if you close your eyes, the light is still there. When you open your eyes, the image projects into your eyes. So the light is always there. So then he came up with theories that light hits an object and it reflects into your eyes. And when it reflects into your eyes, the image is obscured. Okay? Because this was what he was seeing. So he didn't stop there. He wrote 4 volumes on optics about how the eye see. Now, discovering how light travels in a straight line, because this was his concept, that light travels in a straight line. Now, with that breakthrough, okay, everyone who wears glasses, take your glasses off. Take your glasses out. Now, put your glass back on. Alhamdulillah. We're able to see clearly, right? Now, knowing how light travels in a straight line, he also played around with refracting the light, changing the direction of the light. Okay? So when the light enters our eyes, if we are short-sighted or we are far-sighted, there are ways to correct, to give you a corrective lens. So this is what he played around with. Now the basic concept was, and the most important one, was to know that the light traveled in a straight line, so now you can know how to bend the light to come back. So what he did was, he didn't stop at that. He said a theory is just a theory, okay? But a theory is only good when you do an experiment to prove that theory. So he was the first, or they said the father of a scientist who actually took a theory and put it to the test. There was also a crater on the moon that was named after him for his contribution towards astronomy. You see that book up there? There's a book up there. That's his Latin book that they translated from the Arabic language into Latin, and that's how they extract his knowledge. Now, this is something that would explain what he might have done in his days. So if you see that, why I chose this picture here, because number one, it showed the obscured image from the back. But you see there's a guy there and he has a paintbrush and he's painting. Now when the image from the outside comes into the background, if you have a white background, whatever color or design or every intricate part of the architect that you're looking at will protrude on the background, including the color. So painters used to use this concept to do artwork back in those days. Now this picture here, this is from an actual pinhole. So how you would go about doing this? You pick a room, okay, one of your room that has windows, and block all the windows out. And on one of the window, you make a small hole on the material that you block the window out with, and give it some time for the light to enter, okay? And whatever is outside, within the scope of that window, will project on the back wall of your room. Now, I have done this in one of my rooms, and I'm telling you, I had it up there I left it there for a whole month, and every day that I walked in, I saw something new. First day I saw the roof of the building behind me, then I saw the trees, then one day I walked in and I saw images moving, and I looked, I said, look, that's the road, and the cars were moving, so we seen the cars moving, but everything was obscured, okay? Then, the next time I walked into the room, and I looked on the floor, and I saw shadows was moving, and they went past the floor onto the wall, and they disappeared. And I said, subhanAllah, that's the clouds. You know, so this is a project that for kids, they can do this project at home. You know, take a room, block the windows out, insert a hole on the material, and let the light come in. Now you have to give your eye some time, because remember, now the room is very dark. So your pupil of the eye has to open up to let the light come in. Okay? And that was the concept of the European, well, the Latin called it camera obscura. Knowing how to refract light came about the camera. Okay, the camera uses a convex lens. Okay, so the light enters the lens, and you see that it points it in the direction of one point. Exactly the way how the eye sees. The light enters the lens, and the image protrudes on the back of the retina in one point. Now, when we're far-sighted or nearsighted, things happen to our eyes, and they're able to give you some corrective lens to redirect the image onto your retina. Okay? So you either get a concave lens or you either get a convex lens. So inshallah, we will stop at this invention here. And what I want to show you is something that what the Muslim has done in those days, and they lost, but it was never forgotten. So you see this right here. that Allah says, O mankind, verily we have created you from a single pair of male and female, and have made you into nations and tribes, that you may know each other. Verily the most honor of you in the sight of Almighty Allah is the most righteous. Now, that episode there, we held these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. This is from the Declaration of Independence. Okay? When we say that we want Islamic Sharia in this country to rule, okay, fine. We might not have all of it, but some of it is in the Constitution. Some of it is in the Bill of Rights. Okay? The First Amendment allows you the freedom of religion. And that's what it says, that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or forbid the free exercise thereof. Now that means everybody's religion. It doesn't mean all of us. But who wrote these two documents? These two documents was written by Thomas Jefferson. Okay? And we know that a couple of years ago when we saw in the news that there was a congressman named Elliott was going to be sworn into office, and he said that I want to be sworn in with the Thomas Jefferson Quran. Okay? Now he did have a Quran, but he had an English translation of the Quran. And in the Quran, they found a lot of footnotes. So that meant he read. Some of the wording in the Independence of Declaration goes directly of some of the concept of Islam. So we can say that maybe the Quran was influencing him in some way, but not maybe to Tawheed, but influenced him in writing some of these laws. Another thing that I looked at the European Union. Okay, there's 12 unions. They have their universal flag. This concept is an Islamic concept, because in the Muslim Empire, a man was able to travel from Spain to Asia to the Arabian Peninsula without showing a document or without gaining a visa or without changing any form of monetary. And this is the concept of the European Union. That when they formed the European Union, they did it solely so they can do business, they can travel among Europe without any documentation, without any visa, and they have the universal flag. So the country flows, they have their flag flown along with the European Union flag. So that's their signature. Very interesting. This is Miami. This is how the Muslims are influencing now. When you're going on the 395, going to Miami Beach, and you look across, you will see this building. See that building there? It looks different from the other buildings. The other architecture in Miami. This building was designed by a lady named Zaha Hadid. She's from Iraq. Okay? That's her signature in all her buildings that she designed. In every country that she has a building, her building always look different but with the same concept. So, Islam has always been in this country. It's always influenced the people. Okay? When you drive into Coral Gables, into the older Coral Gables, you will see the signs, the street names on concrete blocks. Okay? And one day I'm driving and I saw names like Andalusia, Cordoba, Seville, Toledo. And I said, wait a minute. I said, these are all Arabic. These are named from southern Spain, from the Arabic Spain. And I called the city council and I said, I want to know what's the reference of the names that you have in the streets in Coral Gables. You know, what is the reference? Why do you have these names? And he said the original design of Coral Gables was to bring the southern Spain architecture and the southern Spain heritage into Coral Gables, into Miami. You know, so I said, subhanAllah. So we will find a lot of influence of Islam in the United States. So inshallah, I'll stop here because I have more that I'll do next month, and we'll try to do at least three, so we don't take up too much time, inshallah. Any questions, inshallah? Okay.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam, wa rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.